Here we go. Let's call the West Ada School Board meeting to session. If everyone can stand to do the pledge. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, it is May 10th, and it's 6:00 p.m. All right, we're going to start with agenda approval. Is there any changes to the agenda? Trustee Azuna.
Thank you, Trustee Frazier. You know, tonight I wanted to make a motion for an agenda amendment. I guess I'll say what I'm thinking first, and then I'll give you my reasoning. But what I'd like to do is postpone discussion item F, which is the candidate presentations, and action item C, which is declare finalists for the Zone 4 vacancy, and then follow up with a request that current Vice Chair Frazier schedule a special meeting to discuss next steps. The reason for that, we only received 2 applications for the current opening for Zone 4. When we had the position open last time, we received over 20 applications. I'm not sure what our application process looked like, but I'd like to talk about that in the future. But one of my bigger concerns is that the application that we received for one of our candidates, there's a question in there that says, I'm available to attend regularly scheduled board meetings and special session meetings, and one of our candidates marked that as no.
That was a mistake. I clarified that with him over the phone.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Well, that's good, because I thought we only had one viable candidate. But still with 2, I would make that motion. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on that? Trustee Redford?
I guess my thought process is I think Zone 4 has had plenty of time to, find, excuse me, Zone 4 has had plenty of time to, have candidates apply for the position. Rusty Kofelt, told us in January, 5 months ago, that he would be leaving by the end of the school year. So I feel like there has been plenty of time. So I don't think it's necessary to extend the deadline.
Trustee Bachman?
Thank you. While I sympathize with that, the motion to postpone, I think that if we, postponing, I think at this point would be more of a hope that there would be more candidates, but not a guarantee. And so even if it were postponements, there's not really necessarily a guarantee that there would be more applicants that would be submitted. And so with the amount of time that we had and with the announcements, I think that for this, at this time, I think it would be the best to move forward with what we have, personally.
Okay, and for myself, yeah, I have given this some thought over the last few days as well, and yeah, I tend to feel like there has been a lot of advertisement that people were aware. I have definitely heard from the public in Zone 4 that there have been quite a few people that have thought about running and decided not to at the last minute due to the time commitment that this does have. And so at this time, I think I would be in favor of moving forward as well. Any other comment? All right, is there a second? Pardon me. Okay. All right, there's not. Okay, so we will move forward. Clerk Shepherd, is there any other changes to the agenda?
There are not.
Okay. Okay, and at this point, we need to reorganize the board. I'm the acting chair, but not the chair, so we will turn the time over to Clerk Shepherd, and she will begin that process for us.
So at this time, I will open the floor to nominations for a board chair, keeping in mind that nominations do not require a second. Are there any nominations? Trustee Bacleon.
Thank you. I would like to nominate Lori Frazier for the West Ada School Board Chair. I submit this nomination because of her experience as vice chair, and a transition to board chair would be logical. Aside from that, Ms. Frazier has been welcoming to me as a new board member and has an excellent rapport with each member of the board, as well as those with whom board members work in the West Ada School District. She is well connected and knowledgeable of the West Ada community and stalwart in her advocacy of best educational principles. And while I am honored to serve alongside the other members of the West Ada School Board and would also support any of them as board chair if that is the decision of the board, I feel that Ms. Frazier, with her strong aforementioned qualifications, is best prepared to serve as the board chair.
Thank you. There's a nomination for Trustee Frazier to continue as chair of the board. Is there any discussion or comments? Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Bacleon?
Aye.
Trustee Redford?
Aye.
Trustee Frazier?
Aye.
Trustee Ozuna? Aye. Thank you. Motion passes 4-4. I will turn the meeting over to Chair Frazier.
Thank you. All right, our next action item will be to elect a board vice chair, and I will open the floor up to some motions. Trustee Redford.
I nominate Trustee Ozuna to serve as vice chair. With her tenure on the board and her years of experience, I think she would bring a nice balance to the board leadership.
Are there any other nominations? All right, at this time we'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Bachland?
Aye.
Trustee Redford?
Aye.
Trustee Ozuna?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion passes 4-0. All right, our next step will be our superintendent update by Dr. Bubb, so we'll turn time over to him.
Madam Chair, trustees, I'll make this pretty quick, but I want to take just a minute to brag about West Ada and some of the things that we've seen going on. We're obviously right in the middle of standardized testing and graduation season, graduation season is what it's all about. And so it's really an exciting time for West Ada to see the kids walk across the stage. In that graduation season, it really got kicked off last night. We had 95 students graduate with their associate's degree from Idaho State University. We celebrated at ICCU Arena downtown, and it was just a great moment for our kids to see them walking across. It made me feel old because there was people walking across the stage that were really, really young with their PhDs. But congratulations to all the Idaho State graduates, and really congratulations to our 95 students from Renaissance that walked across the stage. Huge accomplishment for us. With that being said, I will move into our recommendations for principals, if that's good, if there's no questions. All right, recommendation for Christine Donnell, School of the Arts. I will ask Lisa Hale to come up and start with that.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Frazier, trustees, and Dr. Bubb. This evening it is an honor to represent the staff and student learners at Christine Donnell School of the Arts. Before I share the recommendation for building principal, I would like to recognize the professionalism and dedication of the Christine Donnell staff and their current leader, Mrs. Joni Life. Joni Life's leadership over the past 8 years is greatly appreciated and evidenced in every facet of the Christine Donnell community. We wish her the very best in her new adventures, focusing on spending more time with family. We also want to thank the Christine Donnell School of the Arts staff and parents who provided insight and focus on the mission, vision, values, and goals of Christine Donnell School of the Arts. We surveyed both staff and parents to assess what they want in a leader, and Buffy Roberts, regional director, and I spent a full day at Christine Donnell to be available to meet with staff to discuss their needs within the building. With that, it is an honor to recommend Jennifer Maxwell as the next principal at Christine Donnell School of the Arts. Mrs. Maxwell is currently an assistant principal at Star Middle School. She has served the West Ada learning community since 2020 as an assistant principal. Prior to joining West Ada, she served as an administrator and math teacher in the CUNA School District, an adjunct professor for BSU Educational Leadership Master's Program, and started her educational career teaching middle school math in California. Jennifer is a leader who settles for nothing but excellence for all learners. Through supportive and visible leadership practices, she will guide Christine Donnell's PLCs through data analysis, goal setting, monitoring of instruction, establishing best practices, and at the same time, support the strong integration of the arts. Mrs. Maxwell is highly skilled at establishing and supporting collaborative and reliable systems where students and adults are learning at high levels. Upon your approval, we are looking forward to celebrating the successes of Christine Donnell School of the Arts alongside the leadership of Principal Jennifer Maxwell. Mrs. Maxwell and her family has joined our meeting this evening and has a few comments as well as responses to any questions that you may have. Jennifer?
Good evening, Chair Fraser, trustees, and Dr. Bubb. I am honored and excited to stand before you to accept Dr. Bubb's recommendation for principal of Christine Donnell School of the Arts. I have had the chance to review survey and feedback results from Christine Donnell parents and staff, and I'm confident that together we will continue the great work of Mrs. Joni Leaf and the current staff to ensure CDSA is a school that is joyful, high-performing academically, and has a strong foundation in the arts. My husband, Tony, and 10-month-old son, Beckham, are here with me this evening. He's doing pretty good so far. So we couldn't be more thrilled with this opportunity to be part of the amazing Christine Donnell community. Oh, I totally jinxed it.
First rule.
While it is bittersweet to be leaving Star Middle School, I am excited to get to know the Christine Donnell staff, students, and families. I look forward to the upcoming school year and all that we will accomplish together. I welcome your questions or comments.
Trustee Bachman?
Hi, I just want to say congratulations and very much looking forward to working. We're really excited that you'll be at Christine Donnell. It's a great school, and I'm really excited for you to start there. It's a great school.
Thank you so much. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
And we want to welcome you and your cute family and your cute little Beckham that just right on cue took that, so that's great. Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much.
And now we will welcome Mr. Moser to with the recommendation for Lake Hazel Middle School.
Madam Chair Fraser, trustees, Dr. Bubb, good evening. Tonight I have the pleasure of making the recommendation for the hiring of the Lake Hazel Middle School principal. But before I do that, I need to sing the praises of the staff. I was fortunate to spend approximately 7 hours of time with the Lake Hazel staff prior to conducting interviews. Buffy Roberts and I, Buffy also spent time with me for the last half of the last day, so approximately 3.5 hours. Based on the time we spent with the staff, it was easy for Buffy and I to say that they're very aware of what they want in their next leader. Relationships are very important to them, as is a leader that brings a strong foundation and vision to make teaching and learning a priority. Tonight's candidate will meet both of those desires and all of the intricacies that go with those qualities. I would also be remiss tonight if I did not recognize the members of the executive team for the candid, energetic, and passionate dialogue we engaged in during the deliberation that eventually brought forward tonight's hire. As always, thank you to the exec team for the work you do for our school district. Madam Chair Fraser, trustees, Dr. Bubb, this evening I am proud to recommend that Kara Hinkson be named as the Lake Hazel Middle School principal beginning with the 2022-2023 school year. I am sure many of you recognize Kara. Most recently, she was presenting alongside 2 district choir instructors during a school board spotlight while serving as the curriculum coordinator that oversees fine arts, world languages, and the gifted and talented program for our school district. To say that Kara is excited is an understatement. She is ready to roll up her sleeves and get to work. Her positive energy and drive will make an immediate impact on the entire school community and will be the perfect next step for the school. Before I turn the microphone over to Kara, I do want to mention the outgoing principal, Larry Parks. I've known Larry for the better part of 20 years, and I wish him nothing but the best as he makes the transition back to being an administrator in the Emmett School District. Mr. Parks, if you're listening, thank you for your time and dedication to the West Ada School District over the past 5 years. Now I'd like to turn the time over to Kara so she can share a few words.
Madam Chair Fraser, trustees, and Dr. Bubb, thank you so much for this opportunity. Sorry. I knew I'd do this, and I'm really trying not to. I am so excited to be the next principal at Lake Hazel Middle School. I wanted to lead a school for a very long time, and I am very, very grateful to have that dream come true in West Ada. We truly are the best district in Idaho. I'm grateful to have my family here with me tonight. That picture was supposed to be of the family, which is why you saw me look at Nikki and say, really. I have my husband, Mark, my daughter, Ellie, and a son, Charlie, here with us. Both children attend school in Star, and my husband is an administrator in Middleton. I also have family watching virtually, so they're watching me do this. It's fantastic. I have a passion for working with middle school students. I know most of us would not ever want to relive our time in middle school, but it is a time where we can help those kids really learn how to dream big, and we build in that grit and persistence in order for them to reach their dreams. I'm grateful for West Ada's leadership and their faith in me. I know that with the district behind us, we can and we will continue to do the wonderful things that are being done at Lake Hazel Middle School. Go Cherokees. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Trustee Azuna.
Ms. Hinkson, I'm very glad that you're seeing your dreams come true here. I'm also very hopeful that we find someone as great to fill the role that you're leaving behind, because you were wonderful there as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Trustee Bachland.
I shouldn't have turned off. In both cases, in both the new principals' cases, I could give teachers that are both schools that have really inspired my own children, since I live close to both schools, and I don't have anybody in Lake Hazel right now, but I do have a daughter in the CDSA, and I could name some of the great teachers some of the great staff that are at both schools. I don't want to embarrass them though, so I won't. But I just wanted to add that Twitter is not the most inspiring place. However, in my preparation for today's meeting and doing my due diligence, I looked at your Twitter feed, and I have to say that, as somebody who loves art, it was wonderful to see all the great participation you've done in the district and the things you've done, and really looking forward to being a principal there at Lake Hazel. It'll be a wonderful experience, and congratulations, and really looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Trustee Redford.
Congratulations. West Ada is truly fortunate to have you. I love that you have a passion for working with middle school students, because you need passion to work with that age group. Holy moly. And that's such a tough time, and it's so formative. We need the best. So I'm just congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And I'll just ditto to everything that was just said. It's amazing to watch your passion. Welcome to your family, and it looks like you have a little bit of a fan club here as well. So welcome to you all. and we're just so excited to have you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I didn't have to. Okay. Sorry, first time. I'm getting better. All right, so the next part of our agenda will be our West Ada District Spotlight, and I will turn that over, to Dr. Bubb. Thanks.
Yeah, Chair Frazier, trustees. I will tell you, one of the really exciting things that in the West Ada School District right now is our administrative cohort that we've started. I'll give Brett Heller a ton of credit for getting this thing started and getting off the ground. I've had the pleasure to be able to meet with these guys every single Wednesday night, and I will tell you, as part of that, they are very good at getting you off track, but they're curious minds. They're great leaders, and they're really the future of our district. So from that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Brett to introduce this.
So Chair Frazier, trustees, Dr. Bubb, thank you for the opportunity to celebrate this partnership that we have with the University of Idaho. We're going to start off by watching, I believe, I'm looking over at our communication guys, a brief video put together by our communication team.
Listen, I got to tell you, there's a lot going on in this kid's life. Because I have yet to meet the teacher that's like, I don't care about this kid's life. He's blowing in my classroom every day.
The driving force behind the principal cohort is really quite simple. Give West Ada's future leaders the chance to learn directly from the district's current administrative team.
And by having this conversation together around what does it mean to be an effective teacher, what does it mean to be an effective leader and building administrator and principal, and then how does that translate to West Ada Way? Like, how do we get the job done here in West Ada through the lens of what we do?
Real world experiences, real life experiences, real scenarios that are happening with West Ada on our campuses, and those are brought to our attention here at the cohort. So invaluable, in my opinion.
Yeah, and kids may leave your office and convince you, yeah, I got you tomorrow, I got you with a vape, right? I mean, and they will do that, and you're like, man, why did I do this?
And it's also about chemistry. These 24 aspiring team leaders will graduate in the spring of 2023, knowing one another better, but also with a clearer view of West Ada's culture and goals.
A lot of us are going to be working within the district together, and having that rapport and positive relationship before we're even into the position is going to be beyond helpful.
We have a fantastic partnership with the U of I where we're creating structures to keep this going. This isn't, our goal is not a one-time, one and done situation. So there's always a pipeline of leaders coming in and leaders coming out.
It's a good education. It's hard, and we're learning a lot, and we're being pushed to meet the test, because in a leadership position, you have a lot of responsibilities.
Something I took away from that day is just how you treat students fairly, but it's a hard balancing act.
For Chief Academic Officer Marcus Myers, that vision of success centers around organic growth.
And it's our goal that at the end they just say, that was the most wonderful learning experience I've had. Can't wait to be a building principal. And I want to go tell 3 of my teacher leader friends about it so they can jump on it too. So, yeah.
So Chair Frazier, trustees, Dr. Bubb, 2 years ago, myself, members of the executive team, started to notice that we had a decline in the number and quality of applicants that were applying for administrative positions in West Ada. And so we began discussing this idea of, could we form a partnership with the University of Idaho? And I do need to take some time and recognize a number of folks that helped make this a reality. It started with a conversation between myself and Dr. Kathleen Canfield Davis at the University of Idaho up in North Idaho, who then connected me with a number of folks where I was able to kind of outline our vision for a West Ada program for West Ada teachers taught by West Ada leaders, and with that sole purpose of growing our own internal pipeline of high-quality building administrative candidates. She helped me connect with folks like Chandra Zenner-Ford here at the Boise campus, Dr. Laura Holyoke, Dr. Rich Bauscher, Dr. Liz Wargo, who's with us tonight, Dr. Penny Tenuto, our cohort coordinator, Michelle Waits, and Dr. Philip Scruggs from the College of Education. None of this that we're doing right now in West Ada would be possible without all of their enthusiasm behind joining hands with us and making this happen. As you heard in the video, this isn't a one cohort deal. We are in the middle of cohort 1 right now, and already plans for recruiting for cohort 2 to start that next pipeline. I do believe that the model that we are teaching our own teachers how to be leaders, but through the lens of West Ada School District, will pay off long-term for us. We're joined tonight by a number of folks who are going to speak, so I'm going to stop talking and let you hear from some folks who are in the middle of it all. So we'll start off by introducing Dr. Liz Wargo from the University of Idaho. We also have Mark Boatman from Eagle High and Leah Thayer from Discovery Elementary.
New Chairman Frazier, congratulations. Trustees, Dr. Bubb. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Wargo. And instead of, although I could share statistic after statistic or statement after statement that really illustrates the true critical nature of supporting leadership capacity in your district, I'm not going to. I'm just gonna share a simple story as a metaphor that I think better represents what's actually happening here and why it's really critically important. So my daughter is 9 years old, and 2 weeks ago, I found myself on the side of a lacrosse field. She had never played before, it was her first game. There were also only 7 players on the field and no one on the bench. So her coach and the referee was quite inexperienced. And needless to say, whistle after whistle, calls were made, and the girls were getting really frustrated. Not only that, but there was no opportunity to learn from those that were playing the game. At the end of the game, what do you think she might have said? She said, I don't want to do this again. I'm out. Principal burnout and teacher burnout is a huge thing. Statistic after statistic says that it directly impacts kids, which in turn impacts the community. We don't go out like that in our family, so this weekend again, I found myself on the side of the lacrosse field. This time, there were 7 players on the field and there were 6 on the bench. There were also current high school girl lacrosse players who were refereeing. Calls were made and the girls' referees took time to teach right in the middle of the game. There was also many conversations that I was observing, as my hat as a researcher, I can very keenly pick that up, that the coaches had an opportunity to teach the girls on the bench right as the action was happening. To me, that's what illustrates what you have and the greatness of what you have here with the West Ada cohort. You have bench, you are building the structure along with ourselves to have bench strength. The job of a principal is critical. It's not easy. But again, principals are the heart of schools. Schools are the heart of communities. So on behalf of the community that West Ada serves, the larger community of Idaho, and for the future citizens that you are all shaping lives of, because that's what you're in the business to do, right? I'm really grateful to help support this cohort. Now you're gonna hear from a couple that are often on the bench, Mark Boatman and Leah Thera. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, trustees, Dr. Bubb. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about the University of Idaho's West Ada cohort. My name is Mark Boatman, and in full disclosure, I must admit my extreme bias as a lifelong diehard Vandal. This is not my fault. 3 generations totaling 11 family members have attended the University of Idaho, earning a total of 16 undergraduate and graduate degrees from our state's flagship university. After completing this program, that number will be 17. It is fair to say that silver and gold run deep in my family. I'm currently in my 7th year as an educator at Eagle High School, specifically teaching history and American government. The West Ada School District has helped to refine my teaching philosophy and allotted me numerous opportunities to improve upon my practices. For instance, I've had the honor of serving as Eagle High School's Social Studies Department Chair for the last 2 years. A year from now, I'll have a master's in education administration that will allow me the opportunity of becoming a building administrator, positively impacting students beyond the classroom setting. My education, experience, and this graduate program have helped shape me into the educational leader I am today. The University of Idaho's mission statement mentions engagement in a collaborative environment and promotes the idea of making higher education relevant and accessible. The West Ada Leadership Cohort has gone beyond the rhetoric in these regards. The cohort has enabled me to participate in meaningful collaboration with educator peers from all facets of education, from various backgrounds, and from various levels of experience. The cohort has allowed us to engage in an almost laboratory-like experience where we can bounce thoughts and ideas off of each other regarding best administrative practices. The classes have been tailored towards the practical application of Idaho's standards for professional educators with an ardent focus on how to best serve district teachers and students. Currently, we're in the 2nd semester of the program in the midst of wrapping up the Ethical Leadership and Law class, which is currently being taught by our district superintendent, Dr. Bubb, and regional director, Jeff Stans. Other district leaders, including Marcus Myers, Dustin Barrett, Ian Harm, Christy Baird, and Jonathan Gillen, have taught our classes, and throughout the instructional cycle, we have heard from various guest speakers, including building principals, instructional coaches, and state legislators, all with a wide range of relevant experience. And I hear we're looking for more guest speakers. A traditional education program utilizing on-the-job training may be adequate for developing administrators. This cohort program is uniquely beneficial, incorporating various perspectives from building administrators,
district leadership, and most importantly, the collection of teacher leaders within the cohort. We have a few sitting in the back as cheerleaders as well. I've discovered commonalities with my extraordinary colleagues in this program. All exhibit a dedication to student learning, a recognition of team accountability, and the consistent pursuit of advancing our worthy vocation. In the fall, my colleagues and I will begin administrative internships in district schools, applying what we have learned in our classes to practicum experience. Thank you for your time, allowing me to lend my voice and support for the University of Idaho's West Ada cohort. And next up, we have one of my colleagues in the program, Leah Thayer.
Chair, trustees, Dr. Bubb. My name is Leah Thayer, and I've taught in West Ada elementary classrooms throughout the district for the last 18 years. However, it wasn't until this new U of I cohort program was offered that for the first time, I found a way I could positively impact more than 25 or 30 students at a time. A year from now, I'll have a second master's degree called an educational specialist degree, and I look forward to serving as a building leader someday soon, where I hope to support hundreds of students at a time. My first master's degree is from a more traditional university format, but this cohort program has been a much richer and more relevant experience for me. Because of the unique program design, cohort members are better able to make powerful connections with important concepts, with local education leaders, and with each other. For example, the cohort has been tasked with learning outcomes directly aligned to Idaho standards for effective principals, visited legislators at the State House as they considered the future of Idaho education, created building-specific projects in partnership with our principals, and created research-based proposals unique to West Ada itself. All things educational leadership students would never get to do in the old style of master's degree programs. We'll spend this summer examining philosophies of leadership and school finance projects, and in the fall we begin year-long administration internships shadowing practicing West Ada administrators and making even more connections with hands-on, in-person learning and guidance specific to our district, to our buildings, and to our students. One of my favorite parts of the cohort classes are the presentations and honest conversations we have with our instructors and guest speakers. We've heard from current principals, high-level district decision makers, plus representatives from this board, the Teachers Association, lobbyists, sitting politicians, who all influence teaching and learning at the building and classroom levels. These conversations help us understand the purposes and best practices for the logistics of education leadership. Cohort members are engaged and curious because we're passionate about serving West Ada students and supporting West Ada staff. In fact, we consistently surprise our instructors and guest speakers with the enthusiasm and breadth of our questions and conversations. But it's not just those at the front of the room who help us grow. The students in the cohort represent almost every program that West Ada provides. As a group, we teach everything from kindergarten to 12th grade. I come from a GT background, and there are also teacher leaders from athletics, IB, AVID, tuition kindergarten, Title I and EL schools, CTE, and special education. Without the cohort, it would be easy for any of us to get trapped in our silos, but we learn from each other about those areas of expertise. The network we build with each other and the ties we make to the West Ada way simply could not be created in online classes nor in traditional university classes. Thanks to the partnership of West Ada and the University of Idaho, some of our district's best and brightest teacher leaders are in one room with some of our most knowledgeable and experienced decision makers. This makes us better as university students, as classroom teachers, and someday as building and district leaders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wargo, Mr. Boatman, and Ms. Thayer. That was wonderful. It is so great, I think, to see the work that's being done to promote from within to strengthen the district. I mean, really to have people that have gotten involved with West Ada because they love this area, they love the kids, and to see that grow. And I don't know, I think it's wonderful for our district, so thank you so much. Are there any other comments? All right. Thank you. We'll move on to the next part of our meeting, and that is patron input. It's required that we keep testimony to items that are on the agenda. And at this time, we have one person that has signed up, but if there is anyone else that would like to comment once she has completed hers, please let us know, and we're happy to have you come up. At this time, we'll have Julie Edwards come forward. and welcome.
Thank you. Madam Chair, trustees, and Dr. Bubb, I'd like to mention a few of my concerns. Trustee candidate David Benetti organized a group of just under 4,000 parents, which may sound large, but in reality it amounts to less than 5% of all district parents. This was in response to issues surrounding the pandemic, the group claiming to be well-informed and with students' best interest as priority. The outcomes of this group have clearly shown both the board and our community that this is not the case. His outbursts during board meetings and his inability to control the disrespectful behavior of his group members should be the only red flag you need to see. He also led the recall effort of our former chair, and I say effort because it never came to fruition, yet his group claims a victory. Instead, our former chair left because of the harassment that he encouraged. He encouraged because he never asked them to stop. That type of harassment and condescending communication falls under what the West Ada School District classifies as bullying. While bullying is not acceptable from students, it is also not acceptable behavior of grown adults. And to think this will not carry over if he assumes the Zone 4 trustee position is irresponsible. During his public comments, he's proven he's unwilling to listen to both sides and compromise. What also confuses me is how he was reluctant to attend the full-day training course to become a substitute teacher because of the time it took and how he didn't want to be an actual employee of the district, yet he has the time to commit to being a trustee. And throughout the chaos and division amongst parents he caused, why does the school district continue to work with him behind the scenes and allow him to hold meetings with his parent group at the district office? My last concern is that school boards are supposed to be nonpartisan. If that's the case, why are two current board members publicly contributing to political campaigns, and why is one board member currently a treasurer on a political campaign? To me, this seems like a clear conflict of interest while holding a school board position, and these kinds of political moves don't go unnoticed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other comments? All right, if you'd please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Jared Lucas, and I live in Eagle. I just wanted to comment about the math initiative on the agenda today. I have 6 children, and math education is something that's really important to me and my family, and I appreciate Dr. Bubb as a former math teacher as our superintendent. And I know I didn't have the time to participate in the math textbook committee, and I know there were teachers, staff, and parents involved. And I just want to thank those that were involved. I'm sure it was a very difficult decision, but having lived through the Common Core math years with some of my children and seeing the inadequacies of those programs, I'm really grateful that the school board and the leader administration has decided to go in a new direction. And I'm sure there'll be points of view on all sides of the issue, but I do believe that the group of people that came together have given it their best effort, and I'm eager to see the transformation that brings. So I'd like to share that with the committee. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Lucas. Is there anyone else? Okay. We also receive public comment in writing, and every trustee has a copy of that as well, so we look over that. All right, the next part of our meeting moves on to our discussion, and we will start with Patricia Vanderberg, who's going to go over our math curriculum. She is our math curriculum coordinator, so she'd like to come up. Welcome.
Madam Chair Frazier, members of the board, and Dr. Bubb, good evening and thank you for this opportunity to address you today. I want to thank the board for all of their support of the math initiatives and projects this year. I'd specifically like to thank the board for their support behind the Math Symposium, an incredible opportunity for learning for our teachers that is transforming classrooms across West Ada. The elementary math resource adoption is another example of an opportunity for us to continue working with teachers towards raising student achievement through good core math instruction. We appreciate this opportunity to engage in this math adoption, and today we are seeking board approval. We are seeking board approval of the resource the committee has selected. Please let me introduce myself and our team. My name is Patricia Vandenberg, and I have the honor of being the math curriculum coordinator for our district. I'm supported by an awesome team of coaches and coordinators, specifically our elementary math coaches, Shannon and Casey, along with Chris Stoker, our science coordinator, who was over both math and science last year and continues to be a big support to the work we are doing in math. And of course, we are led by the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Barrett. We began our math adoption process just 6 weeks ago by forming a committee that consisted of parents, administrators, and teachers representing the 4 regions and 5 zones of our district. We are pleased to recognize the 8 parents that were on our committee. Some are here with us tonight. As you know, these parents were recommended by each trustee to represent their zone. Thank you, Madam Chair and trustees, for sending us dedicated, insightful, practical, and engaged parents to participate in this process. We met almost every Tuesday and Thursday here at the District Service Center to complete this review. We first met to discuss our priorities in reviewing curricular resources. The rubric we developed was inspired by the 8 standards for mathematical practice, the Student Math Habits of Mind, and the West Ada Vision for Math Learning. I've included a copy of the rubric for you. Using Ed Reports, our team curated a list of 4 curricular resources for the committee to review. Bridges from the Math Learning Center, Into Math by HMH, Reveal Math by McGraw-Hill, and iReady Classroom Mathematics by Curriculum Associates. Our committee agreed that the best elementary math resource is iReady Classroom Mathematics. In every committee vote, iReady Classroom Mathematics was the #1 choice, and when we made the final vote, we had a 70% consensus for this resource. We're so excited about this resource, and something valuable that the parents said during the last meeting was that they wanted to choose a resource that teachers could get excited and stand behind. If teachers were excited, then they knew that they're going to use the resource and make students excited to learn. So let me share with you what we're so excited about. First, iReady Classroom Mathematics consistently has high marks on Ed Reports. The most recent version of iReady Classroom Mathematics earned the highest mark in all categories, green, meaning that it meets the standards. And something that our teachers vetted was the rigor of the program, and our teachers agreed with Ed Reports ratings, that the rigor is there. It is especially evident in the daily session routines and lesson structures, where students have an opportunity to explore, develop, and refine their skills. Our contract is a 7-year adoption. This length of time gives our teachers an opportunity to learn, grow, and flourish with this program. And the adoption includes digital textbooks and consumable print textbooks for every student every year for the length of the adoption. We are even guaranteed updated materials. So each time an update is made or an improvement is made, we'll get the benefit of the newest edition of textbooks each year. This core instruction program is the same platform as our current intervention and diagnostic program. We currently use iReady Diagnostic as our progress monitoring tool and intervention program. The addition of the core instructional program will allow teachers to deliver strong core instruction and have access to data and materials to provide additional intervention and enrichment opportunities for students. One of our parents in the committee said it best. We can't ignore the fact that there's unfinished learning due to the pandemic years, and it's not enough for us to just say that there's some gaps to fill. We have to acknowledge it, and then we have to ensure that teachers have a system and tools to support those students. This adoption would ensure we have access to this powerful intervention system for 7 years. And what's great is that our teachers are already familiar with this platform and how to navigate the resources. And for our students, only one additional button is added to their dashboard, giving them access to their digital textbook. And I think what my team is most excited about is that this resource will breathe new life into math classrooms and math lessons and create new opportunities to embrace teaching pedagogy that research has shown to be effective for students to learn math. Teachers have been using our current resource for years, and so this fresh take on lessons will be a great way to get teachers excited again about teaching math. iReady Classroom Mathematics was chosen with fiscal responsibility in mind. The adoption would include digital and print resources for every student every year, including updates, teachers' editions, including updates, a class set of manipulatives for each teacher with everything they'll need plus extra for growth and turnover, access to K through 8 materials in the online teacher toolkit, iReady diagnostic, personalized learning licenses for every student, and 3 years of professional development for our teachers, coaches, and leaders. After negotiations, we were able to settle on a final cost that is competitive and well within our budget. We asked our parents to dig into all of these resources through the lens of a parent supporting their child at home. We are pleased to share that iReady offers a wide range of supports for families. The iReady diagnostic offers a For Families report that helps parents understand the data that is gathered on their student from each diagnostic given throughout the year. Parents will have access to iReady Central, which offers tips, tools, and ideas and support from the iReady community. In iReady Central, parents will find videos for each lesson that they can watch to understand how to help their child with each lesson. And by far, our favorite resource is the weekly family letter that students can tear right out of their student workbook and bring home. I've printed an example in your documents to review. It always includes an activity or a game for parents to engage with their child using the math that they're learning. And the best part, it includes a list of questions parents can ask their child to continue the mathematical discourse at home. We are so excited to get this into our teachers' hands sooner than later. So here's how we plan to roll this out. We'll host 2 open house events at the DSC on June 2nd and 3rd, and teachers will have the opportunity to pick up their teachers' editions and engage in a short PD on essentials to know before getting started. Teachers will immediately have access to the self-paced online training modules, and if they choose, work through them when they're ready to engage during the summer. And in August, we'll host a series of days where they can participate in a 3-hour training session. The session will be co-led by iReady trainers and West Ada math coaches, and it will be a collaboration focused on using the materials to deliver strong core instruction through the lens of the West Ada way. Our cadre of elementary math coaches will provide ongoing support throughout the year, including opportunities for learning during district collaboration days and with PLCs throughout the district. I look forward to working with building leaders through Leadership Institute, setting expectations, building goals, and helping leaders support teachers through this first year of implementation and beyond. And we know that in any given classroom, it's the teacher that is the magic. The teacher is the one that makes the difference for the students, and our ongoing professional development will be focused on facilitating opportunities for teachers to learn what is good math instruction through the use of this new core curricular resource. Thank you all for this opportunity to bring the math adoption to your attention, and I'm happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Trustee Bachlian.
I didn't even get all the way up. First, thank you for all the work in putting this together and for all the work that everybody has done with it. I had the opportunity to come by the district last week and to review the materials for iReady, and from what I read and what I saw, iReady certainly seems to be a very good choice. I'm also aware that West Ada has already been using iReady for math assessments, if that's correct, and we are now moving to integrate iReady as the core of the math curriculum, at least for the younger elementary school grades for now. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And I just had a few follow-up questions. The first is that 7 years seems like a long contract. Why is it 7 years?
So we're confident that this is the best math resource for our West Ada elementary students, teachers, and parents. And requesting a 7-year adoption allows us the time to learn, grow, and flourish with this resource to really impact student achievement. And after negotiations with Curriculum Associates, the creators of iReady, we're confident in moving forward with a 7-year contract. And the length of this contract gives us the assurance that we have a quality resource for our teachers to use. And in 7 years, it'll be time to adopt a new resource, and this contract gives us enough lead time to secure funding to renew this contract or adopt a new resource.
Thank you. As a former admin, I have to say that I greatly sympathize with long contracts because, yes, as you just said, it gives them a chance to really integrate and to really get into the curriculum. So thank you for that answer. My second question is, I am very happy that the committee is recommending a publisher that has online material. As someone who would like to see less printed material for students, I think this is very much a move in the right direction. My question is, how will the online material be used? Is it a full alternative to printed material, or is it only supplementary, and what are the goals of the online material? Sorry, it was kind of 4 in 1, but you can answer is 1. So sorry about that.
Madam Chair, Trustee Baklian, iReady Classroom Mathematics has a robust online platform that delivers both core instruction and intervention digitally, and it can be a full alternative to printed materials. However, our guidance will be to utilize that online instruction only when appropriate for the lesson or for the school. We are most excited for students to engage in mathematics using physical manipulatives and paper and pencil. And every student will have consumable textbooks that support the teacher-led instruction. We want students to play with math, to talk about math, and see themselves as doers of math in the world around them. For our virtual schoolhouse, the online platform is not only appropriate, but a necessity. So we had teachers from our virtual schoolhouse on our committee to vet this program. And this resource was selected because of the extensive online options for instruction. And it includes digital resources for teacher-led instruction. And then teachers will also have digital manipulatives to model mathematics, while students at home will have their own personal set of physical manipulatives to follow along.
Thank you. And if I could just follow up really quick to that as well. The whole physical manipulatives is really awesome. In Taiwan, where I did a lot of my teaching, the main supplementary curriculum is this thing called MPM, which is the entire thing is just manipulatives, and I love that answer. Thank you. And now to my third question, and it's a little bit longer, so excuse me. I am a strong supporter of Idaho House Bill 377, the Non-Discrimination in Public Education Bill. When I review material to be used in schools, that is something that I look for. When I reviewed the iReady math material, I felt that the focus was on building math skills and on reaching children of all learning and language levels. Having said that, the publisher of iReady, Curriculum Associates, does have some recommended supplementary math learning guidance on their websites. One of the recommended supplementary topics is entitled Access and Equity. Following the links, you'll eventually be taken to the user will eventually be taken to an essay that's called Nora's Story About Culturally and Responsive Mathematics Teaching. In reviewing the essay, I will first say that I agree with most of the message of the essay, that we need to consider learning background of each student. However, the focus of the essay is on what the author, Mark Ellis, calls culturally responsive mathematics teaching. Ellis then gives 4 elements to consider, the second of which reads, engaging and valuing identities, how to honor students' experiences, communication practices, and communities. In reviewing the entirety of the essay, there is nothing that would necessarily be considered inappropriate, at least as far as Idaho Bill 377 is concerned. However, there is certainly room for interpretation, or if you will, misinterpretation. So this question is less one of fear and more one of an ongoing concern. Given that iReady will be more of an integral part of math learning and teaching, what assurances do parents have that the focus of this curriculum will be on math skills and not on anything that would violate House Bill 377? Sorry for the length of that.
Madam Chair, Trustee Baklian, iReady Classroom Mathematics will serve as a resource that helps us teach to our West Ada curriculum. This selection was a community-driven process that included parents, teachers, and administrators that thoroughly reviewed this resource and determined that this was the best choice for our students to meet our long-term district math goals. And we are West Ada. We define what we want students to know and be able to do. Through our West Ada curriculum, which is our priority standards and our proficiency scales, all of which focus on grade level math content standards. And parents can rest assured that this is an appropriate resource to meet our long-term district goals.
Thank you very much.
Trustee Azuna?
Thank you. I have a couple comments and a couple questions. First, I just want to acknowledge our teachers because they have worked really hard without math textbooks or textbooks in different subjects for a long time. And I think they've done a really good job with free resources and leaning on each other. And I don't think that's been easy for our teachers. I know it hasn't been easy for our kids, and it's been frustrating for our parents. And I think we probably all have a why. One of my personal whys is textbook adoptions. and math is my love. And so, like, there's nothing that I probably have celebrated more than math textbooks. And with the elementary adoption, we'll have these throughout all of our grades now. So this is super exciting for me. So thank you. I also want to thank you for making sure that we have print and digital copies of this. I share the concern of several of our parents that are concerned about student screen time. And I think that that's a conversation that's good to have. You know, I think we need to be mindful of our environment for certain, and we need to be mindful of costs, but we need to balance that with what's the right amount of screen time for our kids. And I'm hoping we can have a conversation about that at a later time and just really know what our strategy is going forward and how to get the best balance out of that. The couple questions that I have, what is the actual cost of this?
So, pardon me, Madam Chair and Trustee Ozuna, the final cost for the entire purchase was our budget was $5.1 million, and we are well under that at 4.7.
And that's for the length of the contract?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you. And then the last question that I have, do you have any concerns about how this will flow into middle school and the change in textbook that we use for middle school and high school?
Madam Chair and Trustee Ozuna, no, I have no concerns at all. I'm actually very excited because the way that the teacher-led lessons are outlined is they have this structure in there where there is a lot of mathematical discourse built into this resource. And so when I look ahead to the curriculum, to what we're doing in middle school and in high school, and this is the skill that students need. Students need to be able to talk about math, to engage in math, to argue about math, and to be able to defend their mathematical ideas. And students are going to be given the opportunity now in our elementary classrooms to really engage and explore and refine the skills that they're learning. And I think it will be a perfect segue into math throughout West Ada.
Yeah, I want to thank you too, and I think so many great topics have been covered, but I want to thank the community, the parents, the teachers, everybody involved with making sure that this curriculum did fit the goals of West Ada. I know we have a few of those people here tonight, so thank you to each one of you. I was able to talk with a couple of individuals that were on the committee and just heard such a wonderful discussion that ensued. There was just a lot of ideas expressed. I feel like our population was really well represented with this, and just appreciate the time so much that you put into this. So thank you.
It was my pleasure.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you. Let's clap that one out. That is kind of great. No, I think that's great. All right, the next item in our discussion is a budget presentation, which will be given by Jonathan Gillen, our Chief Operations Officer. We'll be having several discussions on budget. This will be the first of a few tonight, so we're excited and welcome Jonathan.
Good evening, Chair and Trustees. Are you sure you're using the right word, excited? Perfect. All right, well, we are going to get started. So, we changed the process a little bit this year. We thought we would test it out and see. So in the past, what has happened is there has been a budget workshop, essentially around the end of May. It's quite lengthy, an hour plus. A lot of financial data. We go through revenues and expenses. I even try to do a little budget 101, and we try to cram it all in. And then we end up also having a budget hearing June 13th, or a few weeks after. So what we thought was this year we might try to break it up a little bit. And so tonight we're going to spend some time and we're going to talk about revenues. And then in a couple weeks, we're going to spend some time talking about expenses. And then we'll do that same public budget hearing. So hopefully it'll break it up. It'll give you a chance to kind of feel out questions. And if you don't have them tonight, that's totally fine. You have lots of opportunity as we continue to review data to be able to ask those questions later. So with that, we will get started. So agenda tonight. We're going to do Budget 101. I'm going to walk through budget timeline just so you kind of know how that works. We're going to dig into accounting a little bit. We're going to talk about what a fund is. I'm going to try not to be a too boring accountant, but I'm going to give you a little structure. We're going to talk about revenues, just what they are, how we generate them. We're going to spend some time talking about expenses. Not a lot of time, because next presentation in a couple weeks, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about expenditures. But I'm going to give you a little heads up on what they kind of look like, where they're incurred, those kind of things. Then we're going to dig into revenues for all of our funds across the district. And so that'll be the substantial chunk of the time that we're going to walk through. So budget timeline. Tonight, Like I said, we're going to do a 101. We're going to spend some time talking about revenues. May 23rd, so you can start marking these on your calendar. You can start getting really excited about it. I know that you're going to do that, right? We're going to have another workshop. And we're going to talk about expenses, and we're going to spend a lot of time. You're going to see some of the same slides. I'll jazz them up a little bit by the next one. Maybe we'll have some graphs and stuff. But at the same time, we're going to walk through the expense side of the budget. So again, you'll see some of the same numbers, but we'll dig into some different details. Right after that, we are required to publish our budget. And so there are some forms. The staff actually have been working extremely hard, and so I have to always give a shout out to Gloria Rowland. You'll get to see her. She comes to one of the budget presentations a little later on, and she works an immense amount of time on working through our budget. And so she has put together those publications. That gets published right after that, and that's the opportunity. We use some state forms. It gets published in the paper. So if you're like me, you mark the date and you make sure you got it and you look at it and it's really awesome to read. Then we'll walk through that. We'll publish both the 21 and 22 budget. And then June 13th, we'll have a budget hearing. And that'll be a little bit more formal. So there'll be a hearing. It'll be a separate part of the board meeting. There'll be a little bit more summary information because by that point we've talked about it 2 or 3 times. So hopefully we've kind of answered those questions and mitigated any concerns. At that meeting, there'll be action actually on the 21-22 and the 22-23 budget. So you might be wondering, well, we're already in the 21-22 budget. What are we going to do with it? We're actually going to make some changes, and we do this every year. So every year we make some adjustments. We maybe have funding streams where I anticipated a revenue to be X, and it turns out to be Y. As we all know, the budget is just a plan, and we make adjustments to that plan as we work through the year. So we'll make some of those adjustments. And then the district actually has to send our budget off to the State Department, and so we'll do that before June 30. There's not usually a whole lot of involvement on your guys' end once it's approved to staff, and I will take care of that process. All right, so what is a fund? So I put it in italics because it's really accountancy, right? Self-balancing set of accounts. What does that actually mean, right? So governmental accounting is all based entirely on fund structure. Really the easy way to think about governmental accounting is it's really just like different businesses. So we have lots of different businesses. We have the general fund. It's an operating fund. It's really its own business. Then we have special revenue funds. Those are specific as to purpose. And so I'll use these terms throughout. So we're going to start practicing with them and kind of learning how they work. Special revenue funds are specific funding streams. And so that'll be if we receive a particular state funding stream, such as counseling money or lottery dollars, that'll have its own fund. We'll talk about debt service funds. That's where we levy dollars for taxes, and we'll actually levy dollars for debt payments. And then we'll talk about capital funds, which is really how we do our facility construction. All right, so some fun details. This is when it starts to get really fun, right? So a general fund is the major operating fund of the district. I anticipate this will be around $307 million this year. When people think of the school district, this is what they're thinking about. They think about the general fund. That's where most of our teaching instruction costs happen. That's where most of the supplies that we purchase. All the stuff that you would think about the school district, that's usually where it's at, a good place to start. Major funding streams for that are state funding. We'll walk through those in a little bit, and local funds. So those will be taxpayer contributions and the dollars we receive from levying with the supplemental levy. Standard expenses, operations of district as you would anticipate, salaries and benefits, supplies, a little bit of equipment, but not really a whole lot. Most of that's consumables and staffing costs. Special revenue funds. This is when it starts to get particular. So again, when we talk about a special revenue fund, that's for a particular purpose. So when you see one of these, you should say, oh, that's money that the district is getting for a particular purpose. So a particular type of revenues. We'll walk through a lot of those tonight. And we're going to spend the money on that same purpose. So hopefully that will help as you kind of walk through it. So we have some really small ones. We get roughly $750 every year in federal forest funds. That gets its own fund. And then we have some that have $30 million. So our ESSER funding, the dollars that we received associated with stimulus funding. So that's the 2 extremes. Common examples, title. We'll kind of walk through that one today. ESSER funding is one that'll be around for at least the next couple of years. IDEA, special education. State funding streams such as IT staffing, literacy funding, counseling, and safe and drug-free. And again, we'll get the opportunity to walk through all of those tonight. All right, so some other funds, debt service funds. These are the ones that we have accounts for revenues and expenses associated with debt service. So in September, we prepare what's called an L2 form. And that essentially is levying of taxes for our taxpayers. It's usually on things that have been approved, so it's either the supplemental levy or it's bonds that's already been sold and now we're doing the payback. This is the fund that handles those revenues, so those levied taxes that we receive, and it'll also handle any state payments we receive. We get a little bit of what's called bond levy equalization. I'm going to hold that. That's like a budget 300 course. So we'll get to that one eventually. That calculation is, if anyone has spent some time looking at it, it's quite complicated, so we won't cover that one tonight. And then in the debt capital fund also is all the expenses we make for debt payments. Budget will be approximately 35 to 40 million. I can kind of walk through that one when we get to that point. And then capital funds. These are we're going to account for revenues and expenses associated with facility improvements. So we're going to talk about plant facilities. We'll talk a lot about lottery funds, especially since that number went up this year, so that's always good news to share. I like to share those. It's usually equipment, facility costs, repairs, and maintenance. Those run combined around 20 million. All right, so what drives our revenues? What are the main things that help us gather the revenues that we're going to get? So enrollment, in particular now, right, as the legislature has passed a temporary, or the state board passed a temporary rule, we're now on enrollment-based funding as opposed to attendance, so I'll kind of talk a little bit about that. Support unit calculations, talk about what that means. Teacher experience, that drives our salary-based apportionment, and then expenditures incurred and miles driven, that's specifically for transportation. So revenue drivers, this year, going into 22-23, we anticipate about 600 new students. And I will be the first to tell you when we budget pretty conservative, right? So part of our process as we look to budget is to ensure that we can meet our revenues and expenditure targets, and we can make sure that we staff accordingly. And so we do plan for enrollment. That's going to be a conservative level so we can make sure we can meet our revenue projections. You never want to come into the point in October when we're talking about I plan for a budget, and now we haven't made those dollar amounts. So what happens throughout the summer? So we might plan for 600 students, and let's say we grow a little bit more. Mr. Roberts and I will continue to evaluate FTE. We'll continue to annualize class enrollments, and we'll look at where we have needs, knowing that if our enrollment increases higher, eventually the dollars will follow. And so we'll continue to manage expenses. Then we'll take a look at revenues, and then usually what happens when the audit is prepared, which is around the end of September, middle of October, you'll get not only a presentation from our auditors, I'll also kind of give a revenue update at that time based on what our enrollment looks like. So we're anticipating enrollment around 39,100 students. Some of that is associated with grade inflation. So what I'll do is I'll take a look at where our students are at now. If they're a second grader, I'll anticipate they're going to go to third grade. You can walk through the rest of how that's going to look. We do have a larger senior class than anticipated kindergarten enrollment, so that does play with numbers a little bit. Again, all things that we monitor throughout the summer. And now let's talk a little bit about enrollment. So typically, support units are calculated based on attendance. With the rule changing, we're going to be on enrollment. And so really all that means, from the easy way to think about it, is if a student comes, we're going to get to count them. As opposed to when a student was under attendance, we counted them from the number of days they were sitting here and the time they were sitting here. Now we get to count that student essentially as enrolled when they come. So what's a support unit? So this is a driver number 2, right? So the easy way to think about a support unit is that's really the base for all of our calculations. It's a classroom, right? There's a lot of ways to think about it, but essentially if you look at a support unit as this is kind of a classroom, when you get a support unit, it should pay for a teacher, should pay for a portion of an administrator. It's going to buy some people service staff, so that's maybe a counselor. It's going to help pay for a little bit of that classified person that's coming around and taking care of stuff. We're projecting 1,980 of those. This year we have 1,961 and change, 61.25 I think was the most recent number. So we're expecting about 20 to go up. Which is entirely affected based on our 600 student enrollment count and the makeup of our students. Teacher experience, so that's salary-based apportionment. As we evaluate, as our teachers continue to move on the career ladder, that change in their position on the career ladder affects how we're funded. It adjusts our average, they'll call it average salary, but essentially our average revenue generation off of those, and that will affect the dollar amounts and what we're going to get with salary-based apportionment. And then transportation funding, another big component in the general fund, is focused basically on miles driven, a factor of our support unit calculation, and then our expenditures that we incur in comparison to expenditures spent all the way across the district. So there's a lot of calculations that go into that, basically analyzing a funding cap and trying to identify how much we spend per student or per mile in comparison with our peers. All right, so now let's get into some tangible numbers so you don't have to be a revenue calculation expert. So discretionary funding, we anticipate roughly $35,924 per support unit. And that is a big increase. So this year we were getting, for the 21-22 school year, it was roughly around $29,542. And so it's a $6,300 increase. You might be saying, that's a lot of dollars. How come? If you remember, or if you read at all during the legislative session, there was a big push for an allocation for insurance for our staff and try to get staff on the state insurance plan. And so that driver, that metric, the dollar amount we're going to use, was essentially calculated based on a per support unit increase. So that 6382 was identified as dollars available to be used for insurance and or other needs for the district. Salary-based apportionment, we anticipate a 7% increase in our admin allocation and our classified allocation. And so I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by allocation. So currently we receive around $41,000 as our base for administrators, and then we get an experience index. So when I say we received a 7% increase, I guess just to help give context for that, it doesn't pay for everything. And so that 7% increase is an increase on the base, but that base itself doesn't pay for all the expenses the district had. In particular, in the classified staff, the classified allocation will be $24,000, $24,841 per classified employee. And so that same allocation pays for not only the classified staff you would think of, our IT folks, it pays for, staff within the buildings, it pays for paras, it pays for custodians, everyone that you'd think of as classified. So as you might imagine, we have some where we're able to utilize that allocation completely, and other ones where the allocation doesn't cover all the costs. And then salary-based apportionment, kind of talked a little bit about that increase. That's basically based on the adjustments and movement of staff on the career ladder. Other revenues, benefit apportionment. We received 19.59% of our salary-based apportionment, so roughly $28 million. And then in transportation, I'm projecting next year around $11.9 million. And so what you'll see in later presentations, I'll actually give you a comparison. You're going to get a really big book that's going to walk through not only all of these revenue calculations, but the differences year over year. I just didn't want to kind of overwhelm it all on the spreadsheet and on the PowerPoint tonight, so you'll get a chance to see those as well, the increases. Transportation, again, those calculations are really a factor of how we're spending in comparison with our peers, and how many miles we're driving and our efficient use of transportation resources. Other local funding. So our taxpayers are gracious, and they give us $14 million that's approved as part of the supplemental levy process. And then we have budgeted in the budget this year for an emergency levy calculation. So what's an emergency levy calculation? Essentially, as enrollment goes up, the district has the ability to be able to ask the taxpayers if they would like to, or if they're willing to help cover the costs of those additional enrollment. Currently is set and in the budget. Now let's talk about how taxes actually work. The way that process works is there's a wholly separate tax levying process, and for those of you who have been on the board before, we'll walk through that in August and September. So right now we have it set and in the budget, and that's part of the budget setting process, but there'll actually be a whole nother process where we'll talk about financials all in August again and in September, and we'll walk through whether we want to continue to, we want to choose to levy that $3.6 million and what that looks like. And so there'll be a lot of opportunities for board input. We'll also be able to evaluate enrollment at that time and the financial projections of the district. Other local revenues, investment income is set at $675,000. That'll be a slight increase year over year as we anticipate interest rates will go up. We'll get a better return on the local government investment pool. Other income of around $1.5 million, and then rental income is a base of $425,000. So now we're going to talk about special revenue funds. Remember, these are specific as to purpose. So when we talk a few weeks from now about expenditures, you're going to hear me talk about the same purpose associated with the revenues. All right, charter school facilities. So you might be saying, why are we budgeting for charter school revenues? We don't have any charter schools. Well, we do have two that we authorize. And so Meridian Technical and Meridian Medical, they receive facility funding associated with their operations. We as the authorizer, they actually receive that funding. They disperse that funding back to us since we own the buildings. And then we work together as a team on what are the expenses that are going to occur within the building. So it allows them, if they have facility maintenance requests, they can make those requests and we'll essentially fund it from these dollars. So we hold it on our behalf, and so we budget for it accordingly. college and career advisors. So this is funding associated with paying for our college and career advisors. We're going to receive roughly $1.03 million next year, which will be a slight increase, roughly $2,300 year over year. And so as we talk about how revenues can now impact expenses, I guess I want to kind of walk through that process a little bit. So we're going to receive an increase of funding of roughly $2,300. However, expenses will accelerate at a higher pace than that. And so you're going to see me talk a little bit about that with each of these revenue streams, where we're going to see that the revenues did go up, but not enough to cover all of our anticipated expenses. And so what you'll also hear me talk about in a couple weeks is that essentially we're going to allocate some money in the general fund to offset the increase that isn't being paid for. And so this is one of those funds. We received a $2,300 increase. You can, I'm sure, run the percentage of $2,300 on $1 million and know that that's probably not going to be enough to cover the salary increase we anticipate. And so what will happen with those additional costs, we'll evaluate that budget. We'll continue to identify ways to generate savings. And then the general fund will actually have to pick up that difference. And so we'll allocate some dollars. And so you'll see that as you start to look at the book and you'll say, hey, some expenses went up in the counseling area in the general fund. Well, part of that will be to offset some of the costs of just not getting enough of increase in revenues. Content and curriculum, I just put this on there each year. We've had the last 2 years that hasn't been funded, so our hope is that in the following year it will be, but currently those dollars are anticipated to be zero, so those are just costs that the district has basically incorporated in the general fund. GT is much the same, so those costs, that's for the professional development and some of the testing we do for GT students, and those costs, that burden has been borne by the general fund. So IT staffing, so this is dollars that have been allocated to school districts associated with staffing costs for the information technology personnel. And so this dollar amount actually went down a little bit as part of COVID. But we are anticipating an increase of roughly $8,000 year over year. This is another one of those budgets that we monitor, that I look at projections, we evaluate revenues. I can tell you that the funding we receive doesn't cover all the costs. And so what we'll continue to do is keep an eye on how expenses are looking, and then you'll start to see some dollars allocated and then available in the general fund to help cover those. Leadership premiums. So this year, 21-22, will receive $2.2 million. Next year, that will actually drop to zero. And so that was, we talked a little about the increase in discretionary funding and said it was $6,300, and that was a very healthy increase. Part of the offset for those costs are that leadership premiums will go away. And so we'll continue to have conversations and evaluate what it is we can use. We do have some dollars kind of set aside that can offset some of that cost increase for at least a little while, and then we'll continue to manage what that looks like going forward. Literacy. All right, so this one changed quite a lot as well. And so if you have also been following along, this is part of how districts, in particular West Ada, this is how we're going to be able to offer full-day kindergarten. So state didn't necessarily fund full-day kindergarten with a change in statutory obligations, but instead it's being funded through literacy dollars. So you can see we got quite an increase, roughly $6 million. That is exclusively driven off of that statewide funding went up from 26 million to 72, and so a substantial chunk of that portion came to us. The calculation also changed. And so this lends itself a little bit to my comment about the budget is a plan. And it's a plan that's probably going to change. And so as we look at, I'm projecting funding of around $8.3 million. It's a really new calculation for us. And so 50% will be based on enrollment, and so that's something relatively easy for us to calculate. Another 50% will be based on proficiency and whether students met requirements or they increased their proficiency and understanding and literacy. And so that's a number we don't have yet because it's based on testing that we're currently doing right now. And then there's a multiplier for economically disadvantaged, also a number we don't really know yet. And so as we start to roll through the budget, we're going to see that some of these calculations, we're making some estimates, we're making some projections. We have a lot of really helpful people at the State Department and at the State Board that are able to provide us with some information, and then we'll make some assessments of revenues. And then these are part of these things that our office monitors on a daily basis to look at expenses and see how we're projecting with our revenues. Math and science. This one seems to go up and down. It was a slight increase this year of $14,000. It's really just designed to help offset costs associated with offering math and science. Those are higher cost programs, and so that helps at the secondary level. Professional development, we'll see a slight increase in this, roughly $5,600. This is a reduction from pre-COVID levels. And so sometimes you may hear that some of the professional development has changed here at the school district. We have been able to utilize ESSER funding to kind of soften that loss, but there was a loss. A few years ago when COVID first came out, there was a 5% holdback associated with the budget. This was one of those things that got reduced as part of that process, and we're still just monitoring when it'll come back. So for now, we've been able to backfill certain things. ESSER funding is a little bit more targeted, and how we're utilizing it is a little bit more targeted than the broad professional development we were able to offer before. But again, this still gives us some funding to be able to do some of the things we've done in the past. Remediation funding. So this is another calculation that has changed. We'll see, and it shouldn't say a slight increase. That's a nice idea. I wish that was probably me being really happy when I first wrote it. It's a reduction actually of $130,000 based on initial projections. So calculations are driven based on ISAT results, but we are seeing a 30% reduction in the per student factor. At least that's what the State Department is telling us now. This is one of those ones where I actually anticipate the number to get better as the year goes along, mostly as the state identifies the funding they have. And so what happens quite often is, right, the State Department is allocated a budget dollar amount, and then they need to see everybody's numbers and enrollment come in before they can start dispersing funds out to schools. Safe and drug-free, projected funding of roughly $431,000. That is a reduction of $21,000 from the current year. This is one of those things where I'm going to talk about dilution. And so as we switch, in particular, the switch this year was from attendance to enrollment. What you saw was everybody's support units went up. And remember, support units are that factor that really drives all of our revenue calculations. So with an increase from attendance to enrollment, everybody's revenues went up a little bit too. But now the number of students went up. The funding line item actually didn't change. And so now you have an increase in the number of students that are basically eligible for funding, but the funding itself didn't actually increase. So you have dilution when that happens. And so now the percentage spread across the state will change, which usually means that we're going to have a reduction in funding. And so this is a prime example. This is another one of those areas you will see when I talk next week. I'll talk about, hey, here's some dollars we've set aside in the general fund should the need arise, because we're just not getting enough funding to be able to meet the needs for all of our students in this line item. All right, so this is one that really did go up. So let's have some good news, right? Finance people, we almost always just talk about bad, right? I mean, that's how we are, that's how we live. Funding could change almost every day. But here's funding's gonna go up. So apparently during COVID, lots of people played the lottery. So that's great news for school districts. So we received a substantial chunk of increase in funding. So it is probably a one-time increase. There's my negativeness coming back, right? I've said this 2 years ago, it would be a one-time increase, and then it continued. But we're gonna have roughly $3.8 million. So that's a $1.5 million increase, at least for next year. So we'll evaluate things that we can do with that. There's a lot of maintenance projects, as you could imagine, across the district that we'll be able to utilize this funding for. And so now really we're just kind of, we had an initial plan built on roughly 2.3 million, so it was great news to get 3.8. I was really excited. And so now Spencer and I will go back and start identifying what are the other things that we can do. Technology. This is dollars we use for an LMS, technology infrastructure items. Projected funding is roughly 2.58 million. That is an increase year over year of $150,000. This is still a decrease from a couple years ago. This was another one of those items that was reduced during the COVID pandemic, and so we used to receive at our district roughly $4 million. And so this has been a reduction. Again, what ESSER funding has been helpful as the board received that plan. We did identify some technology needs as part of that, and so that's been able to soften this loss in funding. We'll continue to monitor and continue to make our requests for additional funding in the future. All right, that was blasting through special revenue funds as far as state funding. I'll keep going, and then I'll take a breath, and you can ask as many questions as you like. So this is a change from what you originally received in your packet. So as I said, part of budget, we got information Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and I was super excited. Not so excited with the numbers, but at least excited that we had it. And so I wanted to be able to update you. We do have a reduction in our title funding, and you're gonna see that straight across the board. What is really impacting that is a 15% decrease in our census data for economically disadvantaged. And so we were at like 6.92%, and I think the State Department is telling me 5.2 or 5.5. And so basically that percentage reduction led to a reduction in funding. So I've already visited with some of the folks with title. We've started to talk a little bit about what this looks like. We'll continue to monitor that budget. I do think it'll go up a little bit. That's usually what happens. So you'll continue to get more allocations throughout the summer as stuff get adjusted. And so I do anticipate a little bit of an increase, but this will be a reduction in our title funding, and so we'll have to work through what the impact will that be to our budget. And then IDEA funding, I have to apologize. I got really excited and I just kept copying numbers over. So the chart on the 4th column is not really a difference. That's actually just the funding level. We're anticipating a 2% increase in Part B in preschool. These are still to be found. So where we had title information, I'm still waiting on IDEA funding. I'll be honest, we probably won't get it until July. And so that's not unusual. We'll usually walk through the budget process, making some projections, and then Ramona and I will visit about what the budget looks like as we continue to work through that process. And then the stimulus funding, you'll notice it reduced. This was one-time funding the district received. We received roughly $1.7 million, and so we have used some of that, and so we'll have $1.2 million available for next year. But eventually that funding will go away, and then we'll have to shift those costs back either onto the general fund. All right, other funds, debt service and capital. When we talk about debt service, levy revenues, we're anticipating $40 million. So when you set the debt service fund revenues, you typically estimate a little bit high. And so what will happen as part of that whole L2 calculation process we'll do in August, we'll actually decide exactly what that number is going to be. And you will have the opportunity. I'll give a presentation in late August. It's as exciting as the budget presentation, so just be prepared. And then we'll walk through that, and then we'll also spend some time actually going through each of the calculations so that you can feel comfortable with what it is we're going to levy, and then we'll go back through and adjust our budget accordingly. Those are some other debt service revenues we get, again, bond levy equalization, and then we'll have fund balance available. And then capital and plant facilities, we still have a little bit left from the 2018 bond. We're still working through final expenditures associated with Hawaii High School. Plant facilities, I anticipate around $4 million in fund balance, and then we actually have a plant facilities levy of $16 million, and so that'd be the other revenue streams. And then stimulus funding. So we still have dollars available in ESSER 3, and so this is essentially our spend down plan associated with the programs and options that you guys had heard about previously. So most of this year is going to be some of the dollars associated with the textbook adoptions that we're doing and utilizing ESSER funding for those. There are some technology purchases that are this year, so lots of upfront costs associated with our ESSER 3. And then we'll have the other things such as our math coaches and our continued math work that we're doing and the focuses we have in those areas, all basically based on the items the board already reviewed in the fall. And then you'll see the spend down, it drops pretty substantially as we work through those one-time expenditures, $6.5 million for 23-24, then 4.4 for 24-25, and then those dollars will go away. All right, time for questions.
Comments, questions? That was very exciting. That's right. No, I really appreciate you going through all that. Yeah, we are also, I think I can speak for the board and say we appreciate that you kept that to a half an hour, and I look forward to the multiple nights to digest all that information. It is a lot, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Trustee Azuna.
Mr. Gillen, I was going to ask if you could repeat that.
Absolutely. We'll start at slide, no. You're just looking forward to the next 2 weeks, aren't you? I know.
I woke up this morning and thought, budget presentation. Yes. No, I was excited. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the next step in our discussion will be by Marcus Myers, our Chief Academic Officer. He's really going through a lot. We'll just turn the meeting over to him and tell him have a good time. He's going to go over calendar revisions, the draft bill schedule, and a draft school calendar and stakeholder feedback process. So take it away, Marcus.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair, trustees, Dr. Bubb. Yeah, we are going to have a good time and talk about some great things through teaching and learning, including the foundational structures by which we get the job done in our school calendar. But first, I want to point out a couple things. Tonight is a really great reflection on why we all love our jobs as much as we do. Had opportunities to talk with school leaders, both current and in the future, who are just super engaged in the process, and their leadership and containing their excitement for learning and teaching in schools is tough and it's good the podium's here because they would be up and dancing and just really celebrating the great work that they're looking forward to. And then incredible people like our curriculum leaders and coordinators who are so excited about their content and how important that is to students teaching and learning and their success. They can barely contain themselves in the process of what we went through for community input and stakeholder input and teacher input and student input around learning processes that work best for them and tools for that. And then lastly, you know, my dear friend Jonathan, in regards to how operations is done to ensure that in order for all that to happen, the dollars, cents, the structures, and the buildings have to be there to be able to make it work. Jonathan teases that he doesn't love finance as much as that looks like, and it's not engaging and exciting. I can tell you it's super engaging and exciting. Jonathan just puts a really great spin on it to make it through the lens of like, this is what needs to happen foundationally for us to get the job done. So behind all of that is the calendar, which seems like it's just a calendar, but in reality, it is the foundational practice to how we get jobs done. And in a sense, it's the same process as a teacher laying out, here's what's gonna happen over the scope of the year. Here's when students are going to learn. Here's when we're going to plan those learning opportunities and make sure that it's quality for all. So I just wanted to say that that's exactly why I love my job and the opportunity we have here tonight to hear from really great people. And this is what I get to do each and every day. So that's that. All right, here's the overview. There's a few items on my discussion and then an action item for you as the board. The first, just want to overview before I go into the why behind that. An action item to revise the already approved 22-23 calendar. The revisions are in response to two pieces. First, legislative decisions regarding SAT. This is no longer a graduation requirement, and so we want to respond both operationally and instructionally on our school calendar, and I'll talk about the why behind that. And then the opportunity we have to align parent-teacher conferencing, K-8, knowing that we have a K-8 structure in place as far as not holding school that day in order to hold conferences, and then what we do at a high school level that way. Two discussion items. One is around the draft bell schedule for 22-23. Want to note that there isn't an action behind this. This is just an opportunity for you in this first viewing of the draft bell schedule as we move forward. There is a component missing with this in regards to two of our schedules, and I'll talk about the why behind that. And then lastly, this is one of those promises made, promises kept in regards to 23-24 calendar planning, and providing an opportunity for stakeholder input processes toward the two options we had discussed back in November in regards to that calendar as we move forward and an opportunity to plan for 23-24. The why behind this. I just want to talk through both the calendar and the bell schedule are in response to input we receive from our community, input from our stakeholders, and input from the board in regards to how to respond and secure instructional time both through the lens of operational and academic decisions. Our goal through all of this is to create structures for stakeholder planning while still staying flexible in creating the best instructional foundations for our students. And here's what I want to note with that. The calendar, there's a balance when we create schedules and bell schedules in the calendar. And that balance is that we want to create structures far enough ahead of time that families, students, teachers, staff, and we can plan what those days look like in our own family lives, but at the same time, what it looks like instructionally in our schools. That has everything to do with the calendar and wanting to get that information out as soon as we possibly can. There's a caveat to that, which is that operationally situations change. Things change within the school year, and SAT is a great example of that, but so is an example when I start talking about high school scheduling at our next board meeting about our level of flexibility in saying this. We want to capture every possible instructional minute for our students. But at the same time, we want to hold true to a calendar. Knowing that, it does create a level of flexibility. We want to let families know as far ahead of time about those calendar days, when school is going to take place, but knowing that we want to capture every day possible. And so there may be some minor revisions to our calendar and bell schedules as we move forward, but we want to hold true to that as much as we absolutely possibly can, while still being responsive to input and changing needs of our students. So here's that first one in revised changes. The SAT, and I gave the ADAPA and the code changes there in regards to it, is no longer a requirement in order for graduation. And so by doing that, we'd like to recapture some of those instructional minutes back. Past practice was this. In order to create a structure at our high schools for our juniors to take the SAT in a conducive environment for that, we would essentially create asynchronous learning. So our students in 9th, 10th, and 12th grade would not come to school that day. They would have asynchronous opportunities for learning. We'd like to recapture those live opportunities back for instruction by changing that back to a full school day for students in grades 9 through 12. By doing that, what we'll still continue to do is provide opportunities and optional opportunities to take the SAT. We want to continue to do that. We're waiting on some additional guidance from the State Department about the funding structure for SAT and how that works with supporting students that way. Regardless though, we're going to create an optional opportunity. We are anticipating less numbers of students because it's no longer a requirement taking the SAT. In a sense, we use that data point for our own instructional planning, but it isn't a main data point for how we move forward formatively over the course of the years. And so we're going to use that opportunity to recapture minimum instructional minutes for students in grades 9 through 12. The second piece is we're presented with an opportunity with restructuring of kindergarten to align conference schedules K-8. So past practice was, and I'm going to make sure I say this correctly because I get a little wordsmith with it, but we continue to hold school during the day for high school students and hold conferences at night. In the K-8, in grades K-8, we cancel school during the day and hold conferences during the day that way. In kindergarten, because of the opportunity we have with full day K, we are aligning K-8 structures with that to make it similar for families. And so everybody will not have school K-8 on October 19th for parent-teacher conferences, on October 20th for parent-teacher conferences, and we'll continue to hold school on the 19th with just evening conferences. So essentially what we're doing is we're still having the same conference schedule we would have for 1st through 8th grade, but now we're just opening it up for kindergarten. Okay? I'm pretty sure I made that sound more confusing than what it actually is. This is a discussion item and not an action item on the board. So this is the proposed bell schedule as it stands now for the 22-23 school year. You may notice that on the screenshot I gave you and the information provided to the board, it starts with high school academies. It doesn't start with high school. The reason for that is because we continue to explore options within our high school bell schedule, not only to meet operational needs, but the opportunity for a possible intervention time frame within there. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. But the goal of this is to provide an opportunity for the board to review this bell schedule, create any questions that you may have, but we'll need to seek approval on an action item on or before the June 10th meeting. Our bell schedule minutes and our calendar we submit to the State Department of Ed, showing minimum instructional minutes as reflected on our bell schedule per the number of days that are on our calendar that are instructional days. I do want to talk about our goal as we went through and revised bell schedules this year. Our goal really was to create a common bell schedule structure that creates consistency, clarity, and a focus on teaching and learning. What you may see in some of this, for example, within our elementary schools in Galileo K-8, we were able to combine those structures as well into a similar bell schedule. Our high school academies are now on a similar bell schedule. Middle schools are on a similar bell schedule that way across all of our middle schools. The two that we continue to explore to make similar in meeting that goal is a common and alternative bell schedule for crossroads and pathways. We have met that goal. I just didn't have the details before this information was due to the board. But I do want to let you know that we have been able to create a common schedule, bell schedule for both crossroads and pathways. In previous practice, those were two dissimilar schedules. And then lastly, as I talked about earlier, we are continuing to explore the high school bell schedule. The start and end times aren't likely the level of revision that we're looking at. What we're looking at is the opportunity for a scheduled, intentional intervention and mentoring opportunity throughout the course of the day for our high school students to not only adjust to individual needs as far as learning gaps, but also to provide some enrichment opportunities and some structured time to do all of the extras in high school that will extend our instructional timeframes. And so in addition to that, we're looking at creating some schedules at some of our schools where the bell schedules had been off a little bit in response to operations and making them similar and making those the same. So essentially, when high school students are in school at our comprehensive high schools, all high school students are in school during the same bell schedule time frame across the board. If you go back and review the bell schedules that are on our website now, that is not the case now, but again, that is our goal as we move into 22-23. We'll be able to have additional information and a second follow-up on the bell schedule at the next board meeting on the 23rd. It's likely this will include the high school bell schedule with the opportunity for that intervention, if that's where the team chooses to move forward with, and then also the alternative middle common schedule for crossroads and pathways. Lastly was the conversation around promises kept, and that has to do with their request from the school board in November when we had presented the drafts of the 22-23 calendar, but also possibilities for the draft of the 23-24 calendar in looking at a school year and looking at two options. One is a calendar where the first semester ends before winter break, and then there's a second option that is more of our traditional path that we have now, where semester ends about the third week of January. We did receive some patron and staff input in regards to the benefits of both types of calendars. We want to reach out to the larger community and our stakeholders and get their input as well. The two draft calendars that you see attached to the screenshot you see there, they'll be able to click on those options and view the draft calendars. We were very careful to show that these are draft until approved by the board that way. But it does create an opportunity systemically to get patron input and stakeholder input on which calendar structure they feel is best, what elements of those calendar structures they would like to see hold tight in regards to 23-24, and other input that they would like to provide the development committee in regards to how to best meet their needs through the lens of the calendar. And so looking forward to that input, we'll make some revisions and then present both possible options and the input from our stakeholder surveys to the Board of Trustees on June 13th. Following up with the promises kept in regards to providing a calendar for our public and for our families and students far enough ahead of time, this is a full year ahead of time, that would allow them for their plans as a family and to be able to structure what we need to academically to meet those needs. At this time, I'd be happy to stand for any questions that you may have or the opportunity to go back, meet with the committee, and provide some additional information for you at the next meeting.
Trustee Azuna?
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Can you go back to that draft bell schedule, please? And I'm just curious, I know you're still working on pieces, but for what we have in place right now, what are the major changes for start and end times for any of these? Is there anything that's major?
There isn't a major change for start and end times. Middle schools there was a push of, right now it's a 5-minute push for middle schools out a later start with a later end release that allows a larger gap in there for transportation. That was the major start and end time release. But when we take a look at high school and elementary had no change to start and end time release. Our academies and middle school alternative sites had a 15-minute change to start and end time, but they're on the same schedule together rather than one being separate from the other. High school has minimal change to that. And although I'd love to be able to provide the details about exactly what that looks like, we're looking at very minimal changes, if any changes at all. Right now, we don't anticipate those changes, but I'll make sure that operationally, we just want to make sure we can meet minimum instructional minutes and then operationally be able to make that happen too.
Okay, perfect. And then before this comes back to the board for approval, can you just make sure that we have a copy of what's current? And I don't need you to put them together, but just something that we can look at.
Not a problem.
Final comparison.
Trustee
Thank you.
Ozuna and Madam Frazier, I will make, Madam Chair, I will make sure that you have both this current year's copy and the previous copy. This current year's copy is on the website that way, so I'll just make sure that you have the opportunity to compare them side by side.
Great.
Not a problem.
Madam Chair, I have a question about the process that we're using for the feedback on the calendar for the 23-24 school year. Can I take a look at the survey form that you have? One request I would have, or something that I'd like you to consider, if we move to calendar 1, what I remember is that it was going to significantly change the start date of our school and the end date. Is there a way to make sure that we can bold that, bring attention to that, so that family members don't have to click on that to know how significant the change is, so that we really get good feedback? I don't want people to miss the opportunity to see it and respond.
Madam Chair, Trustee, we will absolutely make that nice and bold so people can note that difference. I do want to let you know that when we went day by day, calculated minutes, and made other operational changes to the bell schedule this year, that actually created the start date less, it didn't impact the start date as much as we anticipated in November.
That is fantastic.
So what we're looking at is really a 5-day earlier start date rather than the 10-day we thought it would be.
Okay, great
So
news.
it's not nearly as dramatic as we presented in November.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next portion of our meeting involves our candidate presentations for Zone 4 vacancy. We have 2 candidates tonight, Mr. David Benetti and Mr. Brad Ehrlich. We appreciate you being here. Each of you will be allotted 5 minutes to respond to a question that I'll ask you once you get up. I'll give you the opportunity to hear that. And we'll start with Mr. Benetti. I want to make sure that the audience and everybody listening knows that the board will not be permitted to ask any questions tonight or respond to anything. This is just the candidate's opportunity to share with us their thoughts on the following question, which is, why do you think you are a good candidate for the West Ada School Board and the Zone 4 vacancy?
Well, thank you, Chair Frazier. Congratulations. Thank you, Vice Chair Ozuna. Congratulations. Trustee Redford, Trustee Beckman, Dr. Bubb, and all the staff members. Thank you for the opportunity to apply for the vacancy in Zone 4. And I'm seeking this role because I believe that my primary responsibility as a parent and as a community member is to do everything that I can to advance the lives of our children. And for me, it's really simple. It's all about the kids. I'm deeply committed to their success, and it's why I've dedicated the better part of the last 2 years to do what I can to make the West Ada School District the best in Idaho and a model for the nation. And over the past 16 months, I've had the opportunity to build an organization representing nearly 4,000 West Ada parents, teachers, and staff, and I try to keep families informed with what's happening in the district by creating transcripts of the board meetings and maintaining a newsletter to help keep them connected. And through this, I've learned about their needs, their concerns, and their aspirations for our children. And yes, this included working exceedingly hard to keep students in school full-time, all smiles. And again, it's all about the kids. And since our kids can only succeed insofar as our teachers are successful, I've proactively reached out to staff to better understand their challenges and opportunities. Sometimes this can lead to innovative solutions, like creating a program where teachers at our middle school were able to get their lunches back and their prep time back by setting up volunteers to help do that. It also meant being a volunteer substitute teacher because I did want to help, I just didn't want to get paid. And I've also helped create a Python coding club at Eagle Middle School, which I'm happy to say inspired another parent to create a similar school program at Seven Oaks. And through it all, I've enjoyed getting to know the parents and the families and the teachers and staff of West Ada and being in touch with their needs. And sometimes we've disagreed on how to best address these challenges, but every time we're better off when we can meet face to face and talk through these things. Because good people can disagree on important issues, but only if we're able to approach them honestly, and forthrightly, and directly, face to face. So we may come from different backgrounds, perspectives, and yes, even different states, but we're all bound by the same code. We want to do it for the kids because it's all about the kids. And all of this has been made possible with the strong support and encouragement of my wife and my family, which has allowed me to attend nearly every board meeting for the past year and a half, to participate on the math textbook committee, and to do a lot of the other things that I do to try to advance the children in our district, because it's all about our kids. I'm dedicated to the success of this district. I know that this district can be the best district, not only in the state of Idaho, but a model for the nation. And I want to do everything in my power to make that happen. And we face immense challenges. The dynamism and growth of the Treasure Valley is placing incredible pressure on West Ada. And our opportunity to reach common ground has only recently been restored. And while we've made great strides academically in restoring learning loss, we still have a lot of catching up to do, particularly with regard to our youngest students. Nonetheless, I fervently believe that our best days are ahead. The resilience of our students is only matched by the absolute dedication of our teachers and the commitment of our parents. And with the leadership of this board, our superintendent and his staff, I am overflowing with hope and optimism in the future of West Ada. It's never been brighter, never been brighter. And I reaffirm my dedication to do everything that I can to make this the best district in the nation, because it's all about the kids.
Thank you very much. All right, and Brad, am I saying your last name correctly? Ehrlich? Ehrlich, that is correct. All right. We'd love to have you come up and answer the same question, which is, why do you think you are a good candidate for the West Ada School Board and the Zone 4 vacancy?
Well, thank you for your time. Chairman Frazier, trustees, Superintendent Bubb, it is a real honor and a pleasure to be here in front of you. I moved my family back to Idaho because there is still light in the people's eyes here. We moved back because I wanted my children to have a different experience than what they were having in a major metropolitan city. And that light is lit at school and in the community. And there would be no higher honor for me to take my professional experience, my educational experience, and apply it here at the school board. To give you a little background, I spent the first decade of my life as a reporter and an anchor. And in that time, what I really learned is the skill of listening. Listening is so important. Every person has a story to tell. Every person has a chunk of knowledge that's waiting for you to pluck. And in that time, I also learned to be balanced in my approach and to be able to give presentations on what I received where both sides of any issue felt that their voice was well represented and well heard. In that time, I also learned teamwork, putting on a news production, a radio production, hosting a talk show. All those teams take a synchronous team to be able to work and program and spend time to make sure everything works like clockwork. Also in that time, I spent a lot of time in the public eye, and I've gone and covered my fair share of school board meetings. And I feel that as a trustee, I could be an honored, ethical, and moral person to be able to stand in front of the community on 2 feet and to be able to speak solidly, not only what the board decides, but to be able to articulate what the community does as well. In my previous experience, we used data quite a bit. It was a fitness company, data-driven decisions. But also, with that, is listening to people and measuring their performance. I lost my place for a second. After that, I started a company in Chicago, and we grew from, in the fitness arena, we grew from 0 to 60 locations in around 8 years. So a lot of the pressures that you are all feeling with the demand of the number of students that's going to be coming into this place, there's a lot of planning. There's a lot of future preparation that goes with that. And I spent a lot of time and a lot of energy not only building the plan, but rolling that plan out successfully. How that ties back here to the school board is when I was listening to Chief Operations Officer Gillen and he was doing all the numbers, that got me completely excited because for not the first time, but that's really where the tires meet the road. That's the fuel that you put in the engine to get where you want to go. And while I know my wife, her eyes glaze over when she sees stuff like that, I was leaning in. Also programmatically with Academic Officer Myers, I understand programming from my time running those 60 units, running classes all day long, programming staff, programming education, programming start times and stop times, programming breaks. All those things I'm intimately familiar with, and I actually kind of get excited about when we do it. I also sat on the board and advised on legal issues during that time period. You would imagine in the fitness business, it's not immune to lawsuits and changing laws and regulations that happen all across the country, and I advised on those. One of the things that I was good at doing is seeing things that were happening elsewhere in the universe, learning those lessons, and being able to apply them locally with my brand. Besides that, besides the legal, is HR. I understand the left-right lateral with HR, and I also understand that HR is just one phrase that really talks about how you build culture in an organization. You see, the fuel, you can put as much fuel in there as you want, but unless everyone knows the mission, vision, and values, you're really not going to get where you're going no matter how hard you step on the gas. Facilities maintenance, we talked about that today. Having 60 locations and not budgeting enough, I'll say that again, not budgeting enough for facilities maintenance when I first started. I understand what happens when you defer that and the long-term results because of that. I understand recruitment. When in 8 years you go from 1 employee, me, to 600 plus, recruitment and creating a proper recruitment pipeline is so unbelievably important. Because if you're sitting there and going, gosh, we need to hire X amount of people in X amount of time, if you haven't planned well in advance for that, you're not going to find the best talent. You're not going to find the best people. Also, pay, performance, promotion, all those things, I'm really, really intimate with. But the real reason that I'm here is because of my 4 daughters. My 4 daughters, 2 of them are going to be leaving the school district in the next 2 years, and I have 2 that are going to be entering it. So it's really important to me that they get the best education. I could send my kids anywhere. They're going to West Ada schools, and I want to be a part to take that great education and move it to the next level. And my family, not on my side, but my wife's, have multiple generations that have gone through this school district. Her grandfather worked at the sawmill in Emmett. He would probably roll over in his grave if he saw what happens with the new club there. But we're committed, I'm committed, my family's committed to this area and this district. And at this time, I don't have any other financial opportunity costs that would keep me from spending most all of my time working on issues with West Ada. There's no other place I need to go, no other thing that I need to do except build West Ada School District schools into the best and most robust schools that they can be. And the clock hasn't moved at all, and I don't know if I'm trespassing on my time.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
You're there. No, that was perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. So the next step in this process, at our next meeting, our next regularly scheduled meeting, we will have our 2 candidates answer various questions and possibly make a decision that night. We'll see where we get at that point, but we'll definitely be letting you know. Thank you so much. At this time, we will move forward with the action item, and I will open the floor to any motions anyone like to make. Trustee Redford.
Motion to approve the district's recommendation for iReady Classroom Mathematics as the elementary math textbook selection.
All right. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those is there any discussion? All right. Being none, all those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? All right. Motion passes 4-0. I'm open to any other motions at this time. Trustee Redford.
Motion to approve the 2022-23 calendar revisions.
Right. We have a motion. Is there a second? Trustee Bachman.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And at this time, I'll open a motion for our finalist. Any declaration of who we'd like to see go forward? And Trustee Redford.
Motion to move both applicants to the finalist round of interviews for Zone 4 trustee.
All right. Is there a second? Trustee Bachman.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Your aye? Okay. Aye. So motion carries 4-0. All right. Thank you. All right. Next is the consent agenda. I'm open to a motion for that. Trustee Redford.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right. Is there a second? Trustee Bachman.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right. I'm open to any motion. We have an executive session on our agenda. Trustee Redford.
Motion to enter executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061B to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, or public school student.
All right, I have a motion per Idaho Code 742061B to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints to charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, individual agent, or public school student. Do I have a second? Trustee Buckman?
Second.
Do I need a roll call vote for this? Or
For
yes.
executive session,
Okay,
yes.
perfect, thank you. Okay. Trustee Buckman? Yea or nay? Aye, all right. Trustee Redford?
Aye.
Vice Chair Azuna?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. So motion carries 4-0. So we'll now enter our executive session. All right, we'll resume open session at 8:13 p.m. I will open it up to any motions at this time. Trustee Redford.
Motion to approve administration's recommendation to place employee N on paid administrative leave and to continue such leave.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Trustee Bachman?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right, good of the order. Is there anything we'd like to talk about at this time? And are there any future agenda items we'd like to add? All right.
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Azuna.
Thank you. For future agenda items, one of the things that came up when we were talking about textbooks is just the use of technology and screen time for our kids. I don't think that we need to be in a hurry to have that conversation, but I would like to have it when we can find time. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's a great idea. All right. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn. Trustee Redford.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Trustee Bachman.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 4-0. We're done. Have a nice night.